In May 1964, John and his wife Cynthia traveled to Tahiti for a month-long holiday with George and his new girlfriend, Pattie Boyd. John used this time off from their hectic Beatles schedule to write a few new songs like Anytime at All, When I Get Home, and No Reply.
If you look at any of those books that say where the Beatles were working, you find we hardly ever had a day off, and we'd have to complain to Brian. He'd have all the pressure of people saying, yeah, we want to book the Beatles, want to book, I gotta have them, making him offers he couldn't refuse. We were having to say, we've got to have a day off, man.
We didn't get any time off. Yeah, we seemed to get 5 minutes off here and there. It might have been longer than that, but it felt like 5 minutes. But that was okay.
George Martin coined the term pot boiler to characterize a fast-paced, vibrant song to open the record. Every Beatles album was to open with a so-called pot boiler to build anticipation, ideally a Lennon-McCartney original. He accomplished this with energetic tracks like I Saw Her Standing There, It Won't Be Long, and A Hard Day's Night. Maintaining this pattern on their fourth British album, Beatles for Sale, presented an important dilemma because the Beatles were primarily now writing slow, introspective songs. Two of the songs they recorded during these sessions, I Feel Fine and She's a Woman, would not be on the album. Instead, they were picked to be featured on both sides of their most recent single release. George Martin was then forced to choose a less than enthusiastic track to start the album, and he chose No Reply. At first, John didn't seem to think much of the song and sent it to Tommy Quickly, a recording artist under Brian Epstein's management.
Tommy Quickly is the only singer that Epstein has signed up from Liverpool who's yet to score a hit on the charts. All the ingredients are here in this studio and will take just 2 hours to mix into success or failure.
John had a tendency to undervalue his songs, which occasionally led to him offering them to other musicians. For example, Ringo would have received John's Woman for his album Stop and Smell the Roses if producer Jack Douglas hadn't stopped him. As it happened, John recorded a rough version of No Reply in a hotel room to show Tommy Quickly. Guitarist Colin Manley, who performed on Tommy Quickly's version of the song, claims the demo lacked a bridge and concluded with the sound of a flushing toilet, which undoubtedly reflected John's feelings at the time about the song. Tommy Quickly did record a version of No Reply, but it never went anywhere. Since John and Paul were at a loss for new material for the next album, and since Quickly had not released a recording of the song by late September, the Beatles decided to reclaim No Reply and record it themselves. Before I Feel Fine replaced it, the track was actually considered to be their next single release. We wrote No Reply together, but from a strong original idea of his, Paul relates. I think he pretty much had that one, but as usual, if he didn't have the third verse and the middle eight, then he'd play it to me pretty much formed. Then we would shove a bit in the middle, or I'd throw in an idea. Featuring the bossa nova beat introduced to the world beyond Brazil by Tom Jobim, Stan Getz, and Charlie Bird, the song was lyrically inspired by Silhouettes, a top 5 American hit by the Rays in late '57. The opening lines of the song bear a certain resemblance to No Reply. Took a walk and passed your house last night. All the shades were pulled and drawn away down tight. From within, the dim light cast 2 silhouettes on the shade. Oh, what a lovely couple they made. Compared to No Reply. When I came to your door, no reply. They said it wasn't you, but I saw you peep through your window. I saw the light. I know that you saw me, 'cause I looked up to see your face. John sings this one and I do the vocal harmony, Paul explained. We tried to give it different moods, starting off quietly with a sort of vaguely bossa nova tempo, building up to a straight beat crescendo in the middle, and then tailing off quietly again. This was one of John's first songs to tell a complete story. That's my song, John said. Dick James, the publisher, said, that's the first complete song you've written where it resolves itself. It was my version of Silhouettes. I had that image of walking down the street and seeing her silhouetted in the window and not answering the phone, although I never called a girl on the phone in my life, because phones weren't part of the English child's life. No Reply was brought to EMI Studio 2 on June 3rd, 1964. They had scheduled this day to record the last track for their album A Hard Day's Night, but things didn't go according to plan.
Yes, I was desperately ill. I was having my tonsils out.
Jimmy Nicol was a very good drummer who came along and learnt Ringo's parts very well, and obviously he had to rehearse with them and got to know the songs very well.
They practiced 6 songs with Nicol, and after hiring him, he left to get ready to join the group the following day. The Beatles used the remaining studio time to rehearse a few new songs after he left. Although George never did anything with his lackluster composition, You Know What to Do, it eventually made it into Anthology 1. Then, the boys gave a hurried performance of the recently penned No Reply, which is also included in Anthology 1. But it was evident that they couldn't finish the song for a commercial release without Ringo, so it was put on hold for nearly 4 months. There is some doubt regarding who drummed on this track because neither Jimmy Nicol nor Ringo were there on this particular day. It was probably Paul though. Because the A Hard Day's Night album had only 13 tracks, it may have been suggested that had Ringo been present, it would have been the 14th track on the record. They began the process of properly recording the song on September 30th, 1964. Along with John and Paul's vocals, every instrument, including George Martin on piano, was recorded live during each take. They tried to repeat the bridge and last verse on take 5, extending the song from 2:14 to 3:17 after realizing how the bridge was a focal point in the song. They returned to cutting the song off after the 3rd verse, after determining that this was a bit excessive. The best take, take 8, had both John and Paul overdubbing their vocals. John had a track record of singing songs about being mistreated by a lover. In fact, this theme had been present since their debut album. The melody line, chord structure, vocal delivery, and musical arrangement of No Reply, however, are distinctive in that they persuasively portray the subject in a way that has been never done before. In his previous work, he typically chose to write about teenage romance, which was popular at the time. But now, he seems unafraid to express real emotions in his lyrics. In this regard, he may perhaps be considered to be leading the way among the Beatles. Chosen as a downbeat opener for the album, No Reply is one of John's most affecting songs of this period, its lyric matching the sad succinctness of its melody. Almost nothing is said, the story is complete, and the sighing added ninth of the final C major is accepting of the bad news. There is no reply and never will be.
I remember travelling with the boys and being almost kicked out of an aircraft by some reporters who wanted to get on. I remember being in a lift stuck between floors because too many people crowded in, and being escorted by police cars.
Yeah, there was all kinds of stuff. You know, we flew out of Montreal in order to avoid Ringo getting killed. You know, it was that kind of stuff was happening all the time. It was terrifying. Some people would set off firecrackers in the hall and you'd think one of the others had got shot or something.
It was just one giant 3-ring circus from which there was no let-up. The only peace they got was when they were alone in their hotel rooms, hearing the screams outside and watching television. But that was about it. A hell of a life, really.